Welcome to Tabernacle Talk. Tabernacle Talk is a Bible study podcast brought from Tabernacle Baptist Church in Essex, Maryland. I'm your host, Brian Self. We hope this podcast encourages you to know Christ, grow in His Word, and show His love to others. Let's dive right in. Hello and welcome back to Tabernacle Talk. I am excited for today's episode because I only have to do 4 verses this time. And today's verses are 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 4 through 7. 1 Timothy 3, 4 through 7. And we've been talking in the letter from Paul to Timothy about the local church and what it looks like to worship, to pray, to evangelize, for those that are leaders within a church, what they should not be like, what they should be like. And so that's where we were last episode, is we walked through verses 1 through 3 and saw the list of characteristics for those that would be in the senior leadership of a local church. Scripture only talks about 2 types of church leaders, elders, sometimes called pastors, and deacons. And so the first of these, elders, or what is called a little bit less than elders, overseers, and least of all, pastors or shepherds. We read this in verse number 1. I'm going to read through into where we're at today. If you want any specification on any of the descriptions that are given of the kind of character that an overseer or an elder is to have, you can watch that last episode, or you can look over at my episode in Acts 20, or the one in 1 Peter 5, or the episode, the legacy episode that we did in Titus chapter 1 for more details on any of those. It says, if anyone aspires to be an overseer, he desires a noble work. An overseer, therefore, must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, self-controlled, sensible, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not an excessive drinker, not a bully, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not greedy. And then here we have our verses for today. He must manage his own household competently and have his children under control with all dignity. If anyone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of God's church? He must not be a new convert, or he might become conceited and incur the same condemnation as the devil. Furthermore, he must have a good reputation among outsiders so that he does not fall into disgrace and the devil's trap. So kind of the main thought that we're going to be looking at today from these verses is the fact that God has His church organized like a family. And in the church family, there are, if you will, church fathers. So here's what we're going to look at first then in verse number 4. So an overseer, a pastor, after all of these other characteristics that we've looked at, he must manage, he oversees his own family, his own household competently, and have his children under control with all dignity. Okay, here's what I want us to notice here first. There in the beginning of verse 4, to manage one's household competently. When you I'm sure you guys have seen this many times. When you have walked into some people's house and it is just mayhem, there is chaos. For you to walk into this person's home, you know this is just going to be a madhouse. That is not to be the situation with a person that would be an overseer or an elder of a local church. Instead, the kind of if you will, the kind of father, the kind of leader that he is in the home shows that he is capable of leading people, as exemplified by his own wife and kids. And during this time period, if you had any like household servants, that would also fall under your household. Can I ask you today, what is your house like? Is your house a place of chaos and disorder? Is your home a place where there is not peace or any sort of, I'll say, organization, not in a sense that often it's used nowadays of, is everything in its perfect box? And if you pick up an item, does it bring you joy? And have you removed all the items that don't bring you joy from your house? Not that kind of thing. But is your home a place where both you and those that you have over can find some peace? Now, that is a tough ask. I have toddlers right now, and so even with, well, I keep saying that. My daughter is 3.5, so she's almost out of the toddler stage. My son, at the time that this episode releases, he'll be like a week or week and a half away from turning 6 years old. So they're not really toddlers anymore. I got to stop saying that on the podcast. I've got young kids, and so they love making messes. And so actually that's meant for me, as I'm trying to manage my household competently, I am trying to help teach them, hey, when we play with toys, we put them back. When we take off clothes, it goes in the hamper, or, we fold them, we put them nicely into our bed so that we have our pajamas for that night. If there's trash, I got to make sure that I don't just say, well, Samantha or one of the kids will take care of that. No, I need to have that desire to take care of those things. Do you realize here, all of these things that we've been looking at for an overseer, these are all characteristics that all Christians should share. Every Christian ought to be self-controlled. It's one of the fruit of the Spirit. Every Christian ought to be hospitable. Every Christian ought to be not a bully, but gentle. Every Christian ought not to be an excessive drinker. All of these things are for all Christians. And those that follow that path of what Christians should be, those are the people that we look at to be our church leaders, not just those that make the most money, not just those that are the most charismatic, not just people that want to be leaders. What matters is our character. And so how we live, if you quite literally, how we live within our home plays a part in our character. And so do you view your home life as something that is valuable and important? Now, here what's not strictly in view is, the chaos of your home. It specifically deals with the people within the home. And for elders, for overseers, what that means is that we need to be able to lead the 1 or 3 or 5 people that the Lord has already given us before we attempt to lead anyone else. That we would say, I, just like a elder would teach other people the word of God and would encourage them in their walks with the Lord and would give them scriptural advice. Are you doing that within your own home? If you will, every father, every husband is a pastor of a church. They're a shepherd. They're one that would seek to guide others within their home. Or perhaps, I know of many people and friends that I've had over the years that they are women and their husbands either do not know the Lord at all or profess to know the Lord, but it doesn't actually impact their schedule, their words, their finances, any of that kind of stuff. And so I've seen women that have faithfully taken their kids to church when their husbands would not, and women that would consistently pray for and love their husbands in a way that guides that husband towards follow Jesus, just like I am exemplifying for you. If you will, it's setting the example within the home. And so every father is called to be one that would guide and set the example for the home. That's not to say, like, women, do whatever you want. You don't have to be an example. No, you follow Jesus too. And especially if your husband isn't setting the example for what it looks like to follow Jesus, you set the example from the Word of God. You live out your Christian life and live it and help those around you, help your kids, help your grandkids, help your spouse to know what it looks like to follow Jesus, because they can just look at you. That is here predominantly what is in mind as Paul tells this to Timothy. Someone that would pastor those that would be an elder or an overseer in their church. They are pastoring their family well. And that based on that case study, they can be trusted to pastor the larger church. I'll tell you guys just transparently, I was 26 years old when I came here to Tabernacle and began pastoring. 5 years before that, I had come to Moses Lake Baptist Church in Moses Lake, Washington, and was made a music and discipleship pastor there. I don't totally know if, as I look back over the course of my life, I don't know that I would have called Brian Self a pastor at that point. Like at 21, I think it was 21 years old when I came to Moses Lake. I don't know that I would have called Brian Self a pastor. Now, I might have said, here's our music director or something like that. I don't know that anyone could have said, oh yes, Brian is pastoring his home very well at 21. Now, by 26, I had some kids. I had, been married for 5 years at that point. And so, Lord willing, there was able to be that fruit seen that people could say, oh yes, I do see he pastors his family well. Now, if a person is not married or does not have kids, this does not mean, okay, well, we really shouldn't consider them as a pastor, because if they don't have a household, how can we tell if they manage their household well? Well, this can go for maybe a person isn't married or doesn't have kids, but how do they interact with perhaps their parents, if they have siblings, nieces or nephews, or even within the church. You can have your spiritual brothers or sisters, or a man can be discipling some people, and you can just see through his life, he is already doing the pastoring work. He's already doing the leading by example in the Jesus way. He's already doing that. And so this is what Paul tells Timothy: find people that are trustworthy and competent to be able to lead others, beginning with their own home. No matter how gifted or charismatic a person might be, and a great orator, all of that kind of stuff, if he cannot lead his family, if they have no respect for him, if there is no obedience or respect from his children, if there is just total opposition and hurt from his wife, that she goes, okay, yeah, he talks all this stuff, but the way that he lives doesn't back this up at all. And so I don't want to mimic him, because I've seen the way that he truly lives. That should be a disqualifying thing that we would say, okay, that person, man, they are trying their best to follow Jesus. They are actually really good at explaining God's word, but because of what their home life is like, they would not be good at shepherding others, because right now they're not good at shepherding those that God has already given to them. So that's one consideration that we have. That's something that has to be prayerful. And frankly, I've seen that applied in various different ways across churches, like the way that a given church or a given group of elders will give that evaluation, and what amount of a person's leadership is on them versus how much is, okay, the people in their home. Me as a dad, I can't determine what Samantha is going to do. I can't make a choice for B or for Evelyn on what they are going to do each and every day. I can lead them. I can, with my kids, I can tell them what to do. I can have, consequences for specific actions or attitudes or words, and I can try and be consistent, but I can't control them. They're not puppets. And so, churches and existing pastors or elders will weigh differently how much is on the prospective elder, that they would say, okay, yes, he is doing what he's supposed to be doing. These people aren't receiving it well, but we can tell he is attempting to manage his household competently. So I say all of that. That is a really, really tough discussion. And so I want to encourage you, pray for your pastors, pray for your elders, as they have to navigate through some of these situations, as Lord willing, they continue to train up men, and as God brings more pastors, more shepherds on, that those are considerations that they have to make. So pray for your pulpit search committee, pray for your elders, whatever that looks like in your context, pray for them, and pray for your pastors, pray for your elders, that they would continue to manage their household competently, that they would faithfully shepherd those that God has given them, so that they are able to shepherd well all of the rest of God's family, which is exactly what verse 5 says. If anyone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of God's church? I also wanted to mention there at the end of verse number 4 that he has his children under control with all dignity. That what is in mind here, knowing what I know about the Old Testament, is that you would not have what happened with Samuel. You wouldn't have what happened with, what was Samuel's predecessor's name? Man, it has totally skipped my mind. I'm going to go over to 1 Samuel chapter 1, because I know that's where it's found, but I cannot remember that guy's name. Eli, the priest Levi. So what is in mind here is that you would not have what happened with Eli, with Samuel, or with David. That in those stories, each of those men were good, godly guys, but their sons were wicked people who were actively sinning, that were, Eli's sons actually were committing sexual immorality within the tabernacle with women in Israel. It was just an awful, horrible thing that was taking place. So, but what we're told in those stories is that those fathers did not tell their sons no. There were no consequences for the actions that they were doing. And they had responsibility to constrain, to stop the evil that was going on. But they refused. And so here, what Paul tells Timothy is those that are going to be leaders in the church should not be like those guys. Instead, for as long as you have kids in your home, they ought to be under control. They can be told no. There can be consequences for their actions. So, want to encourage you, if you have kids, it is your responsibility to tell them no. It is your responsibility to have there be consequences for their actions. If there are never any consequences for your children when they do what is wrong, you are training them up in a bad way. They will continue to ignore God and all authorities as we abdicate our responsibility to show them what good authority is supposed to look like. So if you're a parent, take your job seriously. It's part of your character, how you raise your kids. Set boundaries for your children. When they break those boundaries, hold them accountable, have there be consequences, do it lovingly, do it with a care for their soul. Let them know that even when they fail, that it doesn't take away your love for them, but that it helps mold our character as we learn to submit, first and foremost to God, and then to the other authorities that God has in our lives. Okay, verse number 6. He must not be a new convert, or he might become conceited and incur the same condemnation as the devil. You can think of Satan's sin as pride and arrogance, where he says, I will be like the Most High. I will ascend to the mountain of the Lord. That was Satan's pride and his arrogance. And so he was brought down because he thought that he was something special. And a lot of times when there's a new convert, they can be lifted up really fast into leadership if they're particularly charismatic or gifted, or they're able to learn a lot of the Bible quickly. And so people will put new Christians into positions of leadership or prominence, and it's really bad for their souls because they begin to think that they are someone special. I think that's all I'll say about that at the moment. And then verse number 7, furthermore, he must have a good reputation among outsiders so that he does not fall into disgrace and the devil's trap. Our testimony towards outsiders, towards those that do not know Jesus, is important. When the outside world looks at Brian, they need to be able to say, all right, I might not agree with his Jesus stuff, but I do believe that he is genuine. I think he's wrong, but he's genuine. When the world goes, no, like they are fleecing those people. He is, actively sinning. He's, pursuing extramarital affairs. He stole from this business. He, lied on his taxes in this. When the outside world looks and they see someone that would be judged in the world leading a church, man, that brings reproach on the name of Christ. And so it's the reason why, like, if Brian ever screws up and does something that I should not do, my church should not be like, okay, well, how can we cover this up? How can we, kind of shuffle this under the rug? We really like our pastor. We'll keep him. No. For the sake of Jesus, throw me under the bus. And whatever I or any other pastor do, like, we are deserving of the condemnation that we get from the world when we choose to not follow Christ in our words and in our actions and behavior. It is really important because if we're going to reach the world, we should not be behaving or speaking in such a way that the world goes, man, that is super messed up. Like, this is a criminal. This is someone that is clearly in the wrong. And so why in the world would we believe the Jesus people when the Jesus people are embracing wickedness? There are a lot of weird applications people have made of that at times. One instance that was kind of in the news recently was one of the lay elders of a church in Minnesota serves in our immigrations and customs enforcement. And the church had a bunch of protesters that came in during a Sunday morning worship service and disrupted the church service because of the elder that just has a government job. And I saw some people that tried to apply this particular verse to that situation. But the truth is, if we're going to have a government at all, then I would hope that there would be some faithful, godly men with good, godly characteristics like we've been reading about, and that those would be the best people in the world at immigrations and customs enforcement, because they would be led by the Spirit of God, that they would not have, if you will, if they're aligned with Jesus, they don't have racial animosity towards someone, that what they do with reserve, that they are gentle in the way that they are treating, that they have kindness in the way that they are interacting with those that are being deported or those that are being held, that they would care for the needs of people. And so that would be, to my mind, the best kinds of people that you would want in positions of government. So I wanted to mention that just because I've seen it in the cultural zeitgeist recently as pertaining to this particular verse. But the point of the verse is not, do people in the world like you? The question is, are they able to say, hey, here is this wrong, here's this wickedness, here's this evil that they are doing? And especially in that situation, it was not, hey, he has taken this course of action, we saw this thing or that thing that he did. It's kind of a wholesale, we are against this division of the government, or we're against their placement right here, right now, in our state and in our city. And so we are going to disrupt a church because one of their elders serves in this capacity in our government. And certainly that should not be something that we ever do. You can have a whole lot of disagreements with a variety of governmental things, but the answer would never be, hey, we're going to disrupt a church's worship. That should not be the right course of action, especially as Christians, as believers. Jesus gives us what to do. Go and talk to that person. And as we do that, as we follow God's way, Lord willing, he is glorified and his work continues in some great ways. Well, next episode, we're looking at what are deacons like? And we're going to be looking in particular at verse number 11 on why some churches have only male deacons and why many churches have deaconesses. And we're going to see from those verses, all right, is this okay? Is this acquiescence to culture? Which one is it? So in case I haven't angered people enough already, I'll see you next episode.